good morning, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Roundtable Talk Show. I am your host, Sharifa Hardy, and I am bringing you some amazing guests today. I'm so excited. We've been talking backstage, learning a little bit about each other. When you meet these guests, I'm sure you are going to be excited as well. But before I introduce the guests, I'm going to ask you to do what I always ask you to do, and that is to go out and be an evangelist, be an advocate, be a supporter, be a fan, whatever you want to call it, of the Roundtable Talk Show, because we're here today because of your support. So go ahead and share the show. Friends don't let friends miss out on the Roundtable Talk Show. And while you're sharing, I'm going to introduce our first guest, Mr. Robert Berry. He is the founder of Robert Berry Gallery in New York City, a virtual art gallery. Good morning, Robert. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on the show this morning.
You are so welcome. I love your beard.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been taking a lot of effort.
Is that a COVID beard?
Absolutely, yes.
I meet so many different guests, and I could tell where the hair is like, and they're starting to look a little like Moses. I'm like, okay, it's COVID.
Well, the barber was able to cut the hair, but not able to cut the beard in New York, because we still have to wear a face mask during everything, including barber visits. So hopefully very soon.
Wow. You haven't like just picked up a razor yourself and it's like, I'm just going to get rid of it?
No, not yet. I've always had a beard, and now I'm just seeing to push the limits while I can.
Okay.
You know, I'm in the art world, and this is actually a very neat and short beard for a lot of people.
I'm almost willing, I almost want to talk to the missus, but I need to go on with the show because I think I've spent enough time discussing your beard, but it just stands out. Okay, a virtual art gallery. I just want to know, was it a virtual art gallery prior to COVID, or is this again a result of COVID?
Well, a little bit of both, actually, Sharifa, because I've been in the art world for about 15 years now, and I've been running some of the leading art spaces in New York, running some nonprofits, commercial spaces in Chelsea and Soho, and the goal was always to start my own business before I turned 40. And I've been doing pop-up shows for probably about 10 years, which means I would find a space, find an emerging artist, and just do an exhibition somewhere. And it's trying to get things through word of mouth, the artistic community, my connections. And now I'm realizing that everything is being done virtually. And this trend really started even the last couple years, where people are more interested in sitting. They're at their desk, they're browsing Facebook, they're looking for art, they're shopping. Everything happens through the computer, their cell phone on the couch, and people are looking for that type of thing. It's, well, today I need to go to work, I need to order spaghetti sauce, and I want a painting to put above the couch. Mm-hmm. So what I'm doing is I'm finding and identifying the best contemporary artists that I can find and giving them a platform to put on a virtual exhibition and to really tell their stories to the world.
Let's talk about an exhibition. So it's not like a art website per se. So if I just had a website where I sold art, I would just be able to have a shopping cart and make purchases. That's similar to any retail store. But Correct. Through you, it's more of a virtual experience where they can see the different art in this exposition. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. So what I've told all the artists that I'm working with, and most of them are my friends that I've known for years. My current show is Alex Cow, and the title is Immortal. And I've known Alex for probably about 9 or 10 years now. And so what I told him is, you can do anything your imagination wants to do, as long as we can do it digitally. So instead of having shipping, logistics, and a lot of other hassles, he can create anything he possibly wants, because we can just do it with the computer, with Photoshop, and all these new tools. So anyone that comes to robertberrygallery.com can really get a feeling of Alex's vision right from their couch.
I like that. I like that, because I'm telling you, Robert, if we would have had this discussion October 6th of 2019, I would have said, people have to see it. They have to touch it. They have to be up close. They have to get a feel for the paints, the feel for the texture, a feel for the artist, you know. But since then, there's been a total shift on how we do things. I always talk about before COVID, I would never have 5 guests per day, 5 shows a week who have the time or even the inclination to sit down and talk about their business. So often people would say, well, I don't do that technology stuff. I don't do that Zoom. And now you got 90-year-old grandmas who are on Zoom talking to their grandkids.
Absolutely. Well, even some of my clients, some older clients that I've worked with for many years, even just getting them to the gallery was difficult. And now I'm doing virtual studio visits. I'll be in Brooklyn with an artist that I represent, and someone will be in Toronto or in Los Angeles, and I can show them exactly what I'm looking at, and they can get a better feel without ever leaving their homes, especially now when a lot of my best clients, it's unsafe for them to leave.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, Robert, I want to come back to you. I want to go ahead and introduce our next guest and get her views and her opinion. This is Phyllis Miller of Miller Mosaic. She's a screenwriter and she also writes about the Holocaust. Good morning, Phyllis. How are you?
Good morning. I'm out here in Los Angeles. It's a little bit overcast, but the sun will come up, of course, bright and cheery soon enough.
Yes, I'm here in Long Beach, and to me, it's just been too hot. I'm waiting for it to cool down. The one thing that we love about Southern California is that it's always 70 degrees. The one thing we hate about Southern California is that it's always 70 degrees. So I'm waiting for it to get back to 70 degrees. But I wanted to introduce you after speaking to Robert, because I saw a lot of similarities in what he was saying as far as being artistic and art. And you're a screenwriter, and that's how you express your art, correct?
Yes, and a published author. And I always have an agenda besides entertaining. I always want to educate people on a variety of topics.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what are your favorite topics?
The Holocaust is one of them, but not for two reasons. First, to teach about the past, but also as a warning today, James is going to talk about his anti-bullying initiatives. And I want to teach young people that they can stand up. They don't have to be Oscar Schindler. They can literally stand up for teeny things and it can make a difference. So that's one of my agendas.
I like that. I like that. People tend to see the word agenda as a negative at times. If this person has an agenda, that they're trying to change the world. So I like the way that you're using it. Now, when you say small things, what do you mean by small things?
It can be anything as small as, I know this sounds weird, but noticing that someone can't open a door because they're burdened with groceries, and as long as you're both wearing masks, I'm a big thing on wearing masks, you can help a person. I mean, that's so small, but lots of young people and old people don't even notice the people around them. So basically, at the lowest level, I mean, the easiest level, notice what's around you and how you can make someone smile during the day. But that's just really at an easy level. And at the other level, it's what can you do with your specialties? I just heard someone say, I wish I could remember who, she said her mentor used to ask her, what have you done for your country every day? I'm not talking politics. I'm simply talking about helping others. So my free nonfiction Holocaust project, Thin Edge of the Wedge, is for that reason that I developed it with a friend. It's a play and all kinds of resources. And it's developed to be used by middle school and high school students. And so to learn about the past, but it comes with questions to help them think about their life today and what they can do to step up to the plate.
I like that. And there was a specific reason why I asked you about little things, because sometimes we put what I may consider little or small, maybe important to James. This may be James' world, but when you have clear examples of what those little things are, it kind of changes our view. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And that's the whole purpose, that entertainment can actually teach people things that they never think about. They can go, oh, I never thought about that. I could do that. I have written one of my pilot scripts that I would love to get produced is a TV pilot called Solomon's Justice. I've done a lot of work with volunteer work for 12 years on PTSD, both for military, active duty veterans, and for non-combat trauma. And this TV show that I wrote is one of the reasons I wrote it is to bring to the attention PTSD, because it can happen months and months and months or years later, and then people don't recognize the symptoms and don't get help, and then they and their families can suffer. So that's what I mean about being aware of the little things about people around you and how you can help.
Excellent point. I often talk about PTSD, and I believe that we focus a lot on it as far as vets, but I think everyone in the world right now is suffering from some form of PTSD because we haven't prior to COVID had the ability to just stop. Even when we lose a relative, a spouse, a parent, it's like, okay, you get 3 bereavement days and go back to your life. Our philosophy has always been get up, get going, get back to life, as opposed to taking that time off to grieve. Now, I'm not going to get on my soapbox this morning, but I just appreciate the fact that you brought that up.
It's very important. I always mention non-combat PTSD trauma. And now I think it's really, when people are stuck at home, really important that people at themselves and others around them realize the symptoms and when they need help.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quote a small step that other people can do in terms of realizing when someone needs help. I'll just say, I have a friend here in LA. She had PTSD from a domestic, not violent. I mean, obviously a violent domestic situation is more obvious, something else. And when I was able to realize what was going on and tell her, and she said, you're right, and she got help. But before, we couldn't understand her reaction. So it's very important to know about PTSD. It's on one of my sites so that you can help others.
Which one of your sites?
It's in support of our troops, in supportofourtroops.com. It has a lot of listings of films and TV shows about active duty and veterans, but there's a whole PTSD section.
Have to check it out. Thank you, Phyllis. I'm going to come back to you. I want to go ahead and introduce our next guest, especially since you already mentioned Mr. James Ryan, who's going to talk to us about Time for Homes, Inc., about housing and social justice. Good morning, James. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. Thank you for having me today.
You are so welcome. I love your wall.
Thanks.
It's great. It's great. I love personality. That's one of the things that I always look for is people who have personality, and you're out there saving the world. So we are going to talk about Time for Homes. We're going to talk about social justice. But what I'd like to know more than anything else is why it's so important to you.
I think it's important to me based on 2 things. One, it's a human right, and I'm, passionate of making sure that we're doing what we can to ensure equity across the board. And 2, being a native New Yorker, you see the disparity every day between, those that are comfortable and well off and those that are destitute and living on the streets. And it's just really, really hard to ignore and not want to do something to fix it.
I mean, you say that, James, and I hear you and I applaud you and I agree with you, but especially in New York City, people do it all the time. They walk by, the homeless become invisible. And I'm not in New York City, but I'm in Long Beach, California. California, a lot of other people come from all over the nation to California because at least they know they're not going to literally freeze to death at night. I mean, not, over exaggerating, not being dramatic. They're not going to freeze to death here in California, but too often we don't see them as people. So again, I applaud you for actually caring.
Thanks.
You are so welcome. So let's talk about your project. Let's talk about Time for Homes. What do you do and how do you make a difference?
Sure. So Time for Homes occupies a relatively unique space in the nonprofit world. We're not a direct service provider. We work with them, help them build efficiencies, and expand the opportunities for them to deliver their services. We're not strictly speaking an advocacy group or a lobbying organization. We're somewhere in between those. So we have a roster of a few dozen academics and policy experts working on looking at the interrelated subdisciplines that affect housing policy. As a country, we've spent God knows how many hundreds of billions of dollars in the past few decades trying to end homelessness, fight this war on poverty, and we've accomplished almost nothing. Obviously, individuals and families have been helped here and there, but on a systemic level, we haven't made those changes that we need to make. We're still failing people on a daily, hourly, minute-by-minute basis by letting people become homeless and not really having the resources there to get someone out of that situation.
Yes, I agree. I believe most Americans right now are one paycheck away from being homeless. And during COVID, so many of them became homeless. That's why your unemployment rates high. People lost their jobs. They are still closing things
Yeah.
here in Southern California. They're laying off thousands of people just from Disneyland alone. So
Yeah, this is a crazy time for that, with the unemployment levels hitting a peak higher than that of the Great Depression, with more and more people facing housing insecurity. There's a couple of studies that show either like 20 to 28 million American families are experiencing or will experience housing insecurity in the next few months, especially as the eviction moratoria expire. And some other studies show that like New York State itself is probably going to see a 40 to 45% increase of homeless people.
so I just want to make sure I understood you correctly, because I like to be informed. This is how I can tell other people. So what I understood is that your organization is not the place that homeless people go to seek resources, but your organization is committed to finding an overall solution to homelessness. If we spent $1 billion and yet there is still homelessness, what went wrong? Did I understand that correctly?
Basically, we have some resources for homeless people. Basically, we send them to our partners as referrals.
Mhm.
But what we're specifically doing is looking at the variety of policy initiatives, seeing what has worked, what should work, do some modeling to predict it out. And we're working on doing a pilot program in New York State, which can hopefully influence national legislation. We have a pretty big and crazy sounding goal, but we're looking to end homelessness in the whole country in 15 years. And I think we can do it and save money at the same time.
That was too okay. So is this a plan that has been reviewed? I don't know what I can ask yet. I'd be like, is this something that's laid out? Is this a top secret plan? Can you share it?
No,
Like, where are we?
it's not a top secret plan, but we are relatively new, so it's being refined as we go. But our sort of approach is based on a pilot project that was done in Hawaii a few years ago. Josh Green, who's now their lieutenant governor, used to be, well, I guess still is a ER physician, but he was also a member of the state legislature. And he managed to get a plan in place as a pilot where they would use a Medicare Medicaid waiver to use funding to prescribe housing in the ER to what they term super utilizers. So basically homeless individuals who would go to the ER for things where you and I might just go to CVS and get some over-the-counter medications. What they saw by prescribing housing and having a case manager for them, they saw a 70+% reduction in expenses. You know, every time you go to the ER without insurance, it's at least $4,000 plus whatever services you get that are billed to the system. And that's paid for by the rest of the taxpayers, right? So we're already spending the money. We're just not doing it in an efficient way. That would be one component of the plan, but not the entire thing. Obviously, you also have to address adequate housing stock, making sure that it's, you know, sustainable, affordable, and that the other needs are being met, right? Whether that's in some instances job training or placement, mental health counseling, substance abuse counseling, things like that. Because there's always a ton of comorbidities in these issues. It's not simply just housing. Though the Housing First model works, it has an 85 plus, 90+% effective rate depending on where you are. Like one of our partners, Y Foundation, who's in Helsinki, Finland, managed to get that city down to a 0 effective homeless population through a similar approach.
In what time frame?
I mean, it's sort of an ongoing thing, but when they implemented the policies, it was literally just a matter of like 12, 18 months to get everyone on board. Because they were able to do it with the organizations that were already there and had a relationship with the people sleeping rough, or the people that were, you know, the so-called invisible homeless, couch surfing or motel living, that sort of thing.
That's an interesting discussion, especially here being in Long Beach. When we get on the 710 freeway, there's literally rows of tents along, I mean, just tents alongside the freeway with people sleeping and living in those tents. One of the reasons is because the high cost of living in Long Beach, high cost of living probably everywhere in the nation these days. So we have to find more ways to help, because if they get a $600, $700 government check each month, and the rent is $25, $2,000, they're like, hey, let me just go off at Home Depot, give me a tent, I'll be okay. And there's so much that goes into it. I want to come back to you, James, because this is something I'm passionate about. This is one of the things I discussed when I ran for Long Beach City Council, is that we have to help people. And part of the ways that we help people is to create jobs and to start small businesses. So I want to go ahead and introduce our next guest, Miss Karen Wellington. And she did just that. She founded her own business and wasn't happy with that. She started to educate about diversity in hair. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about her special oil. So let's talk about Modlux and Noggin Oil with Karen. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm really good. I'm really good. I'm fascinated and so excited to listen to all the other panelists. I have so many questions. My name is Karen. I'm from Toronto, Canada. And I am a licensed hairstylist and a loctician. I specialize in the art of cultivating and maintaining and fixing dreadlocks for all types, hair types. And, when I started in the industry, there was barely an internet. There was no social media. And so I was trying to evolve my techniques and problem solve along the way when people would ask for certain requests. And one of the things that had always kind of stuck in my head was, there's different levels of sensitivity for people. And I was trying to figure out how to alleviate that sensitivity for people when I'm doing the locks for them. And then I, 20 years later, realized that essential oils is really the answer. And I'm very much about, ethical products, the environment. I've partnered up with one of my clients who owns a company called World Hair and Skin here in Toronto. And he has all that experience with, he's one of the most sought after environmentally friendly hairstylists in Toronto. And we developed a product line called Noggin Oil, which is specifically designed for parted hairstyles. So it's really revolutionary in that it's for all hair types. And Brian is Black, I'm white, he's a man, I'm a woman. We really just were ticking off a lot of the boxes and having our own experiences. And what we wanted to bring was something that just hadn't really been thought of before. So it's
very interesting. It's very interesting. And while you're speaking, I'm just staring at your hair because I can. So in the back is actually. Can you like kind of turn? Do you mind turning a little bit? Oh, I like that. See, I would never have. No, that's interesting. You usually don't see a lot of different people with locks unless they're on the beach, just kind of hanging out. Maybe they're on the vacation, then they do certain things. What made you decide to be so passionate about locks?
I think my story is similar to a lot of people. They fall into what they do for a living. They find their passion unexpectedly. Mm-hmm. And as a hairstylist, one of the other hairdressers, I was an apprentice, and one of the hairstylists wanted to start her lock journey. She's a Caucasian woman. And all the hairdressers were like, we're going to start this process for you. And they're all back combing and palming. And then when it came time to fixing them, the hairdressers were like, gone. And so she made the assistants work on her. And for me as an artist, I treat hair as a medium. So it was fascinating to manipulate the hair in an aesthetic manner without chemicals. And it never even occurred to me, that I would do straight hair or versus kinky hair. It just was hair. And my techniques work for all hair types. Early on in my career, I realized that pretty quickly that even, I have one client, I met him on set actually, and the hairdresser came up to him, a Black gentleman came up to him, and she's like, looks at him, she's like, yeah, you're fine. And I was like, oh, because he had locks. And I was like, oh. And the makeup artist who brought me on set, she said, well, she was my client. And she says, can Karen work on his hair? And the hairdresser said, yeah, of course. So I sat him down and I, worked on him a little bit. And I actually said, he says, can I come to your studio? And I said, well, yeah, absolutely. I said, but I don't want to come across as ignorant or naive, but wouldn't the black hair salons know how to do this? And he goes, you'd think. And he says, I've been to so many salons and they don't do locks specifically. So it was a niche within a niche. And I have a lot of mixed texture clients, a lot of different mixed ethnicities. And they didn't feel that they belonged in a quote white salon or a quote black salon. So it's just kind of evolved from there. And now in recent times, realizing how important my voice is in the community to bridge together the two segregated parts of the industry.
Wow. So you like the Rosa Parks of hair? Like you just bring
wow. I don't know, man. Thank you, but no,
just bringing all the people together. There will be change today. No, I don't know. So that's very interesting, though. I like it. I like the fact that you are passionate about what you do. I mean, even the bringing the people together. I'm hearing you and I'm hearing your passion and I'm thinking, but this is hair. Like this is one hair style, but it's more, I think with locks, a lot of people, it's more of like a lifestyle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's very interesting because when you see people walking down the street, and this is to kind of talk about a little bit about what Phyllis was saying, if you observe people, if you watch people, you don't know if they ever did have locks. They might have had them for 10, 15 years, right? It's part of a chapter in your life. That's how I see it. So people will change their hair drastically if they're getting a new job or they're going through divorce or, something substantial is happening to them. And the same thing happens with locks. And a lot of my clients are actually called back to them 2 and 3 times. So they might have them for 3, 4, 5 years and then sort of take a break from it, remove the energy, what have you, and then get called back to them again.
Remove the energy, get a call in. I like all of this. I had a friend one time who was going in an on again, off again marriage. They were always fighting and arguing. She was like, I'm going to leave him. Didn't leave him. Kept saying she'd leave him. She came in one day. She was like, I'm just done. We're getting a divorce. And she had long, pretty hair. She had cut all her hair off. And we were like, oh, she's serious now. Like she was like, I am ready. I'm done. Hair's gone. Like she's like, I'm over it. We was like, oh yeah, she's serious because she cut her hair off. So for women especially, I think we make drastic changes in our personality and it does show up in our hair. Karen, I'm going to come back to you. I want to go ahead and introduce our next guest, Miss Jill Tietjen. She's going to talk to us. She is the author of not 1, not 2. I don't even have time to count all of them. 10 books, right? 10 books. We always talk about people who don't have the courage to write 1, and Jill has 10. And we're going to talk about her latest book, Hollywood Her Story. But I'm going to introduce you to an electrical engineer. Good morning, Jill. How are you?
Good morning, Sharifa. I'm good. It's so wonderful to be here with you this morning.
It is wonderful to have you.
Well, it's really, I'm listening to the other panelists and we all have a journey and we all have a story. And I'm going to blend that in my answer or my discussion here a little bit. I am an electrical engineer. I've spent 43 years planning electric utility power plants, serving as an expert witness, and getting those power plants certified to be constructed and then put into rate base. But at the same time, I was very active in an organization called the Society of Women Engineers, which is a nonprofit organization. And I served as its national president now many years ago. And I started nominating women for awards, national awards, through that organization, the National Medal of Technology, now called the National Medal of Technology and Innovation, awarded by the President of the United States. It's the equivalent, considered the US equivalent of the Nobel Prize. And I learned about all these scientific and engineering women by doing an essay contest for 6th graders on great women in engineering and science. And when we started doing that in 1987, I didn't know but one woman in engineering or science anywhere in the world, and that was Madame Marie Curie.
Mm.
There were so many of them. In fact, just as an aside, the fact that we are here today in this format was made possible by Admiral Grace Murray Hopper, who developed the computer compiler. And that's the computer software that translates human languages into the zeros and ones that a computer understands. We couldn't have Zoom software without a computer compiler. I mean, it goes all the way back to that. And the glass on our computers and our iPhones, our smartphones, that's non-reflective glass. That was invented by a woman named Catherine Blodgett, who was a physicist at General Electric. And so the whole time I'm being an electrical engineer, I'm also researching all of these women. And I started writing articles and giving papers, and that resulted in some initial books. And then in 2008, Her Story, A Timeline of the Women Who Changed America, was published in hardback. In 2013, that came out in paperback. And that was what I now call the first Her Story book. And then Hollywood Her Story, An Illustrated History of Women in the Movies, profiling more than 1,200 women in the movie industry from its founding through 2018, came out in 2019. And like James, who's looking for social justice and housing, where I now understand that I'm going and what I'm doing is I'm seeking social justice for women. And when you start telling women's stories, and when you start writing women into history, you demonstrate that women have value. And when your society values women, it begins to value all people. And that just raises the level of the society, every society around the world when women are valued.
I love that. So many different directions I can go in. I'm going to start. No, it was very interesting, but I'm going to start here with when you say you want the social justice for women. You mentioned James. James has a clear goal of what he expects. They're eradicating homelessness 15 years, period. What is it that you would like to accomplish for the women?
Well, for example, and one of the reasons in the pre-work that we did is I said to James when I heard that he was active with water facilities in Uganda. Right now, I'm actually working on 4 additional books, at least, maybe more. Women in the food industry, women in the magic industry, as few women as there are in the engineering field, and as, well, we won't talk about the treatment. Okay, so, but women in the magic industry, it's even worse.
Mm-hmm.
The percentage of women in the magic industry, I met a magician, I'm working on women in magic. I'm also working on what I believe eventually will be a book for every country in Africa. In the Her Story series, I've drafted Tanzania, I've drafted Zambia. I've actually done the research on all the women to include in Algeria, Egypt, Libya, Morocco, Sudan, and Tunisia. Burkina Faso, I'm working on Kenya right now. And next will be Nigeria and then South Africa. And so I believe, and I'm going to answer your question, I believe that once you start to value women, one of the things that happen is that girls get educated. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the United Nations reports and what they say is one of the best ways that you help a society is that you educate the girls. And so we can ensure that the girls and the boys are educated, and that then, I mean, that helps to eradicate childhood marriage and all kinds of other sorts of issues. Yes, it's a long-term play, but if you don't start, then you can't get there. And that's how all the social justice works. It goes back to what Phyllis actually said. You have to take a step, even if it's a very small step. You take that first step, and then you hope that the next step happens, and then the next step, and the next step, and then it actually gets faster, and then it actually then happens. And if it takes 10 to 15 years or 20 or 30 years. It has to start. And if you don't start, you don't ever get to where you.
Absolutely. I agree. I always think about it in that scene from Forrest Gump when he's running. You know, he doesn't start off running with 1 million people. He starts off running by himself. So every journey, you have to at least start, and then the people will come. The people will be attracted to it. So it's an excellent point. I want to go over to Phyllis right quick. We heard what Jill had to say. She's passionate about women. What were your thoughts on what Jill had to say?
Well, I'm very much in agreement with Jill as a very long time feminist. And I was in one of the first Jewish women's groups in the United States. We had a conference when Bella Abzug came. I mean, I've spent a whole lifetime making sure, even when I write about the military, I just don't say men, I say men and women, always trying to remind people that women are equal. So I love what Jill said. And I think I just got rid of the pile on my couch of all these books I have about women in the Middle Ages, women in Renaissance time. They just got lost to history, and we really need to put them back. So I usually write about women in all my writing, very strong females dealing with issues of the past, present, or future. So I loved what Jill said.
Oh, that was so.
I'd like to chime in here. Well, in the
Absolutely.
art world, traditionally, it was always the white male artists. When 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you would go to the Metropolitan, you would go to the MoMA, and 90% were the white male artists. And in recent times, the art world is looking more to inclusion and is correcting the mistakes of the past, which is something very progressive, as most people in the art world are very progressive and liberal people. And we're starting to make corrections to time, where we're going back and looking for the minority artists, the female artists, and realizing that it wasn't just these white male artists making great art. So we have an artist, Carmen Herrera, who at 90 years old was discovered, and she's probably better than any of those other artists in the 1960s. Ellsworth Kelly is a comparison, and realizing that why was she overlooked? And that's something that myself, and I'm also on the board of an art organization called Discoveries in American Art. That's run by the American art expert Peter Falk. And the main mission of this organization is to go back and find those artists who fell between the cracks. They were lost for one reason or another. Some didn't want to play the commercial game, and some just were guilty of the crime of being female or being a Black artist in the South that no one would look at in New York or Los Angeles. So now it's this, everything needs to be more progressive, more inclusive, and the art world is really doing something to that. So I heard James saying what his mission is, that he wants to help everybody. And at the art world, we're trying to do just that, where everybody gets an equal voice, especially when most of our conferences and our discussions, we're speaking in multiple cities on Zoom right now. We're all on equal ground, equal setting, and this is a perfect time to fix a lot of those problems where everyone is now equal. So the young artist who has a vision and has a voice, I'll work with them, I'll promote them, I'll showcase them. And it's not just if they're a white male or a Hispanic female, it's we're looking for the best artists from today, the future, and the ones we missed in the past. So looking back, as Jill was saying, we're looking for those female artists that were doing things better than their male counterparts. And we want to create this equality where everyone's on an equal platform.
Oh, this is so beautiful. I feel really good about this show. I don't know. It's just the energy of just people saying, I want to make a difference. I want to make a difference. How do you feel, James? Everybody here is mentioning your mission and how it's inspiring them.
Which is excellent. And what I hear kind of running through the whole thing is by recognizing the dignity of all of the individuals that we're researching, that we're working with, that we're trying to help, that we have as our customers, we're actually elevating our own success. So whether that's, writing a book to incorporate and recognize the inherent worth and dignity of the women of Hollywood or whatnot, we're finding personal satisfaction, personal success from that while helping shift the overall paradigm and making a difference. And I think that's a really great way to approach these issues, seeing what we can individually do that resonates with us, that makes, our day our day not long enough because we want to do more, not it's too long and we want to get out of work, and really find something that can help others while still making sure we have a fulfilling life.
Yes.
And
No,
can I just interject?
absolutely, absolutely.
This is to kind of tie in everything that we've been talking about. I would like to recommend to Robert, this artist. She's out of Jamaica. Her name is Nakazi Hutchinson. And this art speaks to me so much. If you check her out online, I promise you, her work is beautiful, just beautiful. So I have this in my salon.
After the show, please email me at robert@robertberrygallery.com. I take a look at everything that comes in, and I'm always looking for the next greatest thing.
Great.
I thought that was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Isn't she gorgeous?
Phyllis, yes. Mhm.
I wanted to say something about PTSD and homelessness. So it's very much connected. In fact, in my TV show, one of the main characters is homeless, and it is easier in LA, but it's not, it's not a party in LA. And it's a big problem in LA as it is in Long Beach. And that's part of the thing, that many of these issues come together. And if we all work on parts and then connect to make it, it could work better than just working separately. Did I make sense?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's the house phone that I can't do anything about. My own cell is off. So I'm just saying that homelessness, besides all the other things that people think about, is frequently also caused by PTSD, including people who are afraid to be closed in.
Hello, please leave a message after the
Why you stopping, Phyllis? I wanted to know who was calling. What they want?
No one has this number. No one has this number. But anyway, to get back to it, and I think it's really important to look at both why some people choose to be homeless and how we can help those underlying causes.
Yes, absolutely. I want to go back to James. One of the things that we talked about beforehand at the beginning of the show was bullying. So talk to us about what you're doing to prevent bullying.
So I work with an organization called Bullying Canada, which is a national organization dedicated to helping the youth going through it. It's Canada's first youth-created charity. It was founded by Katie Thompson and Rob Ben-Frenette, both who experienced some really severe incidents of bullying in their teen years. And this organization's been around for almost 14 years. In December, it'll be 14. Providing resources to schools, school administrators and teachers, to parents and families, and specifically a 24/7, 365 helpline for children experiencing bullying, whether that be phone call, email, live chat, text, whatever, where they take a kind of case management approach and proactively, with the consent of the child, step in to work on resolving these issues of bullying. I'm involved with this because, well, for a number of reasons, but one of the biggest issues that it sort of addresses is the individual dignity, which we mentioned earlier. If you kind of scrape and push someone down day in, day out, especially through, their formative years, the downstream effects can be really devastating. Just picking on someone, okay, well, that's quote, not so bad, right? Well, it has academic consequences, health consequences, et cetera. And those can be very long lasting. The people that have PTSD from it, or that trauma, prevents them from even just sleeping well, giving them, nightmares and stuff, years and years down the road. So that sort of early intervention is really important.
I agree. Now, I'm going to ask you a question that, may or may not agree with, but so many people talk about how bullying is like 50 times worse in these ages in 2020 than it ever has been before, primarily due to social media and people having so many different outlets to bully. Whereas in the past, we never actually called it bullying. Sometimes we call it boys being boys. We call it the kid, they just playing around. So we didn't really look at it as bullying. So do you feel that it's worse, it's better, or do you have an opinion on it at all?
Yeah, you hit the point right on the head. It is worse now. Not necessarily that the percentages of incidents are any higher, but used to be back in the day, right? You'd leave school, you'd go home, and that's it. You'd be disconnected from whatever the source of the bullying is. But now you have it in class, you have it on the schoolyard, or now in Zoom or whatever, but text message, email, social media, etc. There's not really a way to disconnect from it without sort of like the whole like mindfulness approach and trying to be off of your devices, which doesn't really work for most kids because they're using the same thing to do their homework as they are to have their entertainment and, you know, interact with friends, which opens them up to interactions with those people who are not their friends and are bullying them. So it's a really hard sort of atmosphere to juggle. And one of the most important things people can do is, as parents, not necessarily monitor as far as like spyware, but really asking and checking in with your kids, find out what's going on, and making sure there is an open communication, sort of non-judgmental, whatever. And for kids who need it and then don't find it at home, there's tons of resources like Bullying Canada in Canada, elsewhere too, providing those sorts of services.
Yes.
James?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I feel like what's not really being addressed is, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but bullies are being bullied by someone, right? I mean, how a person shows up in their self-esteem is how they take on mean words or threats or anything. But as the responsibility of a parent, and I have a 5-year-old, you know, ensuring that his self-esteem, that he's worthy, that bringing him up, and he had an incident where he was not getting along with one of the kids at school, and then one day he told us, he says, you know, my brain told me to go over to him and ask him if he wanted to go for a play date. And then suddenly they were great. They were friends, and he came over and they found a common interest. Can you comment on that?
Well, a couple of things there. So yes, those that are bullying, the best approach is usually not a punitive approach, right? There's tons of issues that can end up causing bullying, and it's important to look at it from that sort of holistic lens, and which is one thing that Bullying Canada does well with their case management approach, interfacing in instances where they're permitted with the people who are doing, you know, the family of the bully, the family of the bullied, and the school to really find a resolution. Because I mean, a lot of childhood issues stem from something else, right? Poor academic performance could be from bullying, could be, you know, maybe that family's homeless, maybe that family doesn't have food security, whatever. And they show up as sort of indicators that have an underlying cause. So it is always important to kind of look for what those are rather than just, oh, you know, you were mean to this kid, so we're going to expel you. I think you have to take a more nuanced approach to it. And in terms of, you know, like what you mentioned with your own son, you know, sometimes just bridging that gap and engaging is enough. Not always, but oftentimes, you know, it is these sort of self-esteem issues showing up in this way. Like, oh, maybe I don't have any friends, but I can be mean to people, and people will, if they won't respect me, at least they'll fear me. And as a well, unhealthy coping mechanism. So I think your son did right. Just, you know, kill
He
it
said,
with
let's have a
kindness.
play date. Oh, that is so cute. I love that. I love that. I want to go over to Robert real quick. We're talking about bullying and some of the different aspects of it. But also, when we look at society or what we're going through, we often see that show up in our artwork or show up in our music. With everything going on in the world, have you seen that show up in the art?
Absolutely, yes. With most art, it's a direct response to the times the artist lived in. So going back, look at Michelangelo or Da Vinci, they were doing and creating things that were a direct reflection on the society that they lived in. So now in the 21st century, you see a lot of artists responding to things they see. So political things are still hot topics. I know a couple years ago, Jim Carrey made another career in the art world, responding to current political situations. George Bush became an overnight success as an emerging artist. And we're looking for those things that really can change society. The art world should inspire, but it should also make you think. And it can address every single thing that we've discussed today, that it's a direct response. And what I'm doing as an art dealer is I'm looking to improve the world in the only way I know how. I could be doing other things, but I've been working and helping young artists from all across the world, from all backgrounds. And for myself in the career, I'm always doing something different, where I'm either traveling or meeting artists or meeting collectors, and everything I do, I can influence people from across the board. So I can find a young artist from, let's say, Vermont, and introduce to them to a very inspired patron from Boca Raton, and now I can have a dialogue from two different people across social backgrounds, different society levels, and now there can be an open, direct dialogue. Well, the collector can learn from this young artist, and the artist can see the opposing view directly from someone that they're looking to ultimately sell their artwork to. And they might come away, their heels trenched in a little more, but they can say, oh, I've had a conversation with someone, I understand what they're thinking. And now in current politics, there's a line in the sand and we don't cross that line. And that's something that art bridges to create that bridge to really change, where my first election was in 2000, and people had conversations just like we're having today. So if there's an opposing view, we would discuss it. We would get to the bottom of it, explain facts and logic. And that's something the art world looks to do. Sometimes it's facts and logic, sometimes it's an emotional response.
And sometimes it can be a little bit of both. I like that. I mean, we always hear about artists who create from pain. They create because of what they're going through at that moment. I just love the process of creation when we talk about art. But there's also the same process in writing. For Jill, for you, do you feel that when you're writing, that passion to get out the times that you're living in?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, when I look back and I say in 1991, Admiral Hopper was the first individual woman to get the National Medal of Technology, and she's the catalyst for everything that I did after that. How could it be? And how could it be that history books today, out of a standard 500 US history textbook used in high schools across the country, 10% of the content is women, when women are 50% of the population? And so there's a tremendous passion to look at where we are today and how can we better the situation that we're in, not just for women. And there are two things that I want to say. Gloria Steinem said, the past and history are not the same. And people accuse me of revising history. I'm not revising history. It's because the past and history are not the same. I'm restoring the narrative. That's what Robert's doing in the art world. He's
adding to the history, elaborating.
That's what Phyllis is, that's what most of us are doing, is making sure that all of the history is told, that all of the stories are told. And so, yes, it becomes incredibly passionate to look into the women in Tanzania and to find them and to eventually hopefully get the book published. Then everyone in Tanzania or in Africa or in the world can see these women and to know that they were always there. It's just that their stories weren't told. So yes, there's a tremendous amount of passion that comes into this.
There's an interesting connection because I'm working on advocating the missing information in cosmetology schools about learning all textures of hair. And my textbook in school had like one page about for textured hair. And I said, well, if I'm here to learn, I want to learn all of it. It doesn't make sense. So I understand what you're saying. It's missing. It's missing.
Absolutely. I have completely enjoyed today's show. Now we are coming down to the last few minutes of the show. And what I love to do at the end of every show is just simply allow my guests the opportunity to speak directly to the audience, to everyone who is watching this show live, as well as everyone who is watching it in the archives, and let them know what you want them to take away from your appearance here today. And we're going to start with you, Karen.
Okay. All right. So again, thank you very much for having me on today's show. This was really fun, and I'm going to reach out to all of you as well. So this is my product line, Noggin Oil, and also my co-founder Brian Phillips and I. We started our own podcast recently called Lock Talk. And we're interviewing guests and friends and people in the industry and people with locks and talking about their journeys. So I hope that maybe you'll pass that information on to everybody. So thank you.
You are so welcome. I have had guests that have been on the show 8 or 9 times. I have Allison Allman, who's here every Monday. She's the organization maven. So I always invite people to return and return often. And I say that to you, Karen, because we got to talking and I was all over the place. We didn't even have an opportunity to discuss Noggin Oil. And when I read the bio, I'm like, what is Noggin Oil? And we didn't have a moment. So please come back. Please join us again. And we will talk more about Noggin Oil. Phyllis, what do you have for us?
I would love if people would visit my website, thinedgeofthewedge.com, for my free Holocaust nonfiction theater project and school resources and questions for kids to talk about today, even about bowling. It's not just about history, it's about the present and the future, and it's all free. Thin Edge of the Wedge. And you know what it means? Like no one says anything, and then it's too late. So look at it now before it's too late. Thank you.
I have to check it out. I like free. Free's my favorite number. Jill, what do you have for us?
Her Story at timeline.com has information about women in history, including educational resources that teachers can use. And then I also think that HollywoodHerStory.com is just a beautiful website where you can learn about screenwriters like Phyllis and stunt women and editors and actors and producers and directors and everyone who contributes to a movie.
I like that. I'll be up there one day. I'm gonna go there and be like, I met Jill a few years ago and now I'm here. I love it. I love it. James, what do you have for us?
Thank you so much for having me. I would say 2 things. One, next Saturday is World Homeless Day. So check out our website, timeforhomes.org, and to see what you can do, or just step out and give a homeless person that you see in your day some dignity. Just even a quick conversation, let them know that they're not invisible and that they matter. If anyone has any questions or wants me to connect them something, my email is pretty easy. It's me@jamesryan.expert.
I like that. We were speaking to a guest on one of the shows, I think it was last week, and she gives socks to the homeless. That's her whole thing. They set up vending machines where people can go and purchase socks. And one sock, they actually get 2 pairs. One sock is for themselves, and then the other sock is for a homeless person. But what was so interesting, that alone was cool, the fact that she's doing that. Or you can go to her website and make a purchase, and the same thing, you get 1 sock for yourself, and then they give you a second pair of socks free to go out and give to the homeless. But in her spiel and what she was saying, they did a study, and she said that homeless people usually only hear their name 4 times a year. I was blown away. 4 times a year, because people don't address them as James or as a person. They just like see that homeless person. So I think we just all have to do better. I don't know. I got a little emotional there. I'm sorry. Robert, take us out of the show, please.
Phenomenal. Just want to say thank you for everyone being here. Sharifa, thank you so much for having me on the show. And what I'm looking to do is change the world, make things a little more beautiful, a little more passionate, and inspire people. So ultimately, I'm working with some of the best contemporary artists who I feel should have a voice in the current artistic climate and the current political climate. So please take a look at robertberrygallery.com to see what I have to offer and to see what some of my artists have to say about the state of the world.
Yes, that's what we want to hear about, the state of the world and what we all can do to make it a better place. I want to thank you all for joining me on today's episode of the Roundtable Talk Show. And I especially want to thank everyone who tuned in to watch the show live and everyone who is watching it in the archives. Just because you caught it in the archives doesn't mean you're not important, and we don't need you to go ahead and share the show, because we do. Whether you're watching it tomorrow, 2 weeks from now, 2 years from now, it doesn't matter. Go ahead and share the show, because our guests come on to share their expertise and their stories to be of benefit to you. So go ahead and support them. Visit their websites, follow them on social media, send them a message. And when you connect, please let them know Sharifa Hardy says hi. Now, if you're interested in more ways that I can help your business, or maybe you want to pick up your tickets to October 9th and 10th, Powered by Purpose, 2-day empowerment teleconference, or maybe you might want to be a guest on the Roundtable Talk Show. However I can assist you, visit the website at asksharifa.com. Until tomorrow morning, everyone have a safe and a blessed day. Bye now.